So, Project 818 came to a bit of an abrupt end when I trashed the engine. What exactly happened? In fall of 2016, we finished the registration and titling of the car. Mostly this involved passing the state safety inspections and paying a lot of taxes. And then paying insurance. So, immediately after getting that signed off and completed, I went out for a joyride. And almost didn't make it home from that joyride. Basically, the engine lost all oil pressure. I think it dumped half the oil on the road. And at that point, I realized it's pretty much trash, so I'll try and get it home and save myself the fee of towing. Just barely made it in the driveway, and the engine conked out. So that's where this project stopped last year. And to pull the engine out of the car requires quite a bit of disassembly if you're running a hardtop. There's just no way to drop the engine out from underneath. So that was the winter project, basically taking the built car and making it into an unbuilt car. And that's fine. There's a couple of issues that needed to be addressed along the way. A couple of things that I wasn't particularly happy with in the finish-up assembly that we did, and a couple of safety things I want to address before really getting into using this car for what it's being built for. So I don't really know what happened to the engine. A bearing went. You can tell that if you look in the oil pan and see a gold rush like I do. But further than that, I don't know if I'm ever going to actually be able to diagnose it, just because it seems like taking the block apart is going to be more effort than it's worth. I can conjecture that it might have been a really cheap eBay oil pressure transducer that went. I had installed it in the upper gallery, and it made a pretty nice oil slick on top of the engine, so that's probably where the oil loss came from. And again, just guessing, loss of oil pressure at the top probably crushed one of the upper parts of the bearings. Overall, that engine had almost 200,000 miles on it, and we were pushing 18 pounds of boost, so I'm not at all surprised to let go. I think there had been some rod knock events earlier in the week, or weeks leading up to that, so again, this is not a big shock, and kind of always been in the plans to have to replace the engine. Like I said earlier, I don't know if taking the block apart is even going to pay off in the end. There might be some value in reusing the heads, but in 200,000 miles, they're going to need a complete rebuild. And to be honest, one of the cam retainer bolts is seized in there pretty good and rounded off, so it's going to take some cutting to get out. I just don't know if it's worth the time or effort. So what's left? Right now we are basically engine shopping, looking for some solution that we can drop into our built-up chassis. Transmission's not going to get changed. Got too much money and time invested in that right now, and it seems to work just fine. There's another pile of parts that are getting assembled as well, things that need to be addressed as we put the car back together. So there's going to be a couple stages of this rebuild. But first things first is sourcing a replacement engine.